Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the general lecture by Peter van Daele. I'm sure that many of you already know Peter. He's a professor at imec and Ghent University in Belgium, and his background is in optoelectronic devices. Currently, he is involved in the management of EU projects on the future of internet and digital infrastructure. Peter has been involved in URSI for a very long time, so he's been acting as Secretary General since the General Assembly in Montreal in 2017, and prior to that he was Assistant Secretary General since 1993, since the General Assembly in Kyoto. So welcome, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sana, for the introduction. Before starting the talk, I would like to start with some disclaimers. First of all, as Secretary General of URSI, URSI would like to decline all responsibility for the weather outside the last few days. A second thing is, for those who were expecting to see Professor Ingrid Mann here, she had to cancel her participation at the very last moment due to a family issue. So for those who were expecting to see her and see me here now, sorry for that. For those expecting a technical talk, sorry for that. But I thought that for the last day of the conference, a more lightweight, informative talk would serve better. It has been a very busy week for all of us. And then let's get started. But for those who were in the General Assembly in 23 in Sapporo, you might remember a few parts of the talk. I tried to change it, but since it's about history of URSI, and since I cannot change history, there are a few things which are quite similar. So let's get started. Where is and what is URSI? I'll start off a little bit first with trying to show the environment in which we currently are operating as URSI, as an international organization, and then I'll go back to history and the basics. So URSI, what is it? It stands for Union Radio-Scientifique Internationale, International Union of Radio Science. It's a non-governmental, not-for-profit organization. And what is important, we operate under the auspices of the International Science Council. The objectives are of URSI to stimulate and coordinate on an international, global scale, the pure research, applied research in the field of radio science. And so this means that URSI provides a kind of unique link between science and engineering, and we are covering the full breadth of radio science disciplines. And this is something I already mentioned at the opening ceremony in the welcome address. I think this is really the unique character of the URSI flagship meetings, is that we are multidisciplinary and giving you the opportunity as participants, and especially to the young researchers, to broaden your field, to broaden your scope by going to some of the other commissions. Now, let's look a little bit closer. We are international. Every red dot represents one of the member committees. You see a higher concentration in Europe. Well, yeah, it's because the countries are a little bit smaller there than in North America, for example. And also what is important to notice is we're speaking about member committees. We're not speaking about countries. This is historical reasons to stay away from some political, geopolitical issues. So we're speaking about member committees. In total, we have, I think, currently 44 paying member committees worldwide. Now, the second term is radio science. Yeah, okay, science, I think everybody knows here what science is trying to seek explanation, trying to understand, describe nature, and seek for possible applications. But what is in fact radio science? I don't know what the situation is with you guys at home, but if I tell my folks at home that I'm in radio science, they think it's about science of making radios. Well, I think everybody of us knows that's not the truth. But is it about radio waves, radio communications? Is it that what we're looking at? Or is it just radio astronomy? Well, I think, to be honest, what I make it always try to make it simple, I say it has everything to do with Maxwell equations. So everywhere where Maxwell equations come in, it's covered by URSI. And so this means that it's an extremely broad field. But now, to your surprise, there might be another link. I'm not going to play it whole, but there is a link between this area and URSI. If you have been listening or looking at the presentation from Sapporo, you will know the answer. If not, then you will have to stay and listen to me to find the answer. Okay, but let's first look a little bit into what kind of environment internationally that we are working in as URSI. So we operate under the auspices of the International Science Council. The International Science Council is stated here from Wikipedia and also from their website. It's an international non-governmental organization that unites scientific bodies at various levels across social and natural sciences. And our president, Ari Shivala, already mentioned it in the welcome address as well. So IC was established in 2018 and came out of a merge between what was then called the International Council for Science, ICSU, and the International Social Science Council. And by this merger, IC became the largest worldwide organization grouping scientific activities. And as it's stated, it's not governmental, but we have, through IC, a big impact on governmental decisions, but also on decisions taken by international organizations like UNESCO, United Nations, and so on. Now, International Science Council has three different types of members. First of all, and what's called the most important or the original members are the 40 member unions or associations like URSI, I'll show you later. There are 135 plus member organizations. Most of them are the National Academies of Sciences in the different countries. And then there are more than 30 affiliated members, which are international organizations, international bodies that can also provide some advice. Now, out of those 40 member unions, which really cover everything that you can think of about science, there are a kind of selection that was made, the geo-unions. We are teaming up with other unions, scientific unions, which are active and dealing with earth and space sciences. And there are 10 of those, and so we form geo-unions, and we try to have together with those 10 unions, an impact when decisions have to be made at the higher levels, at IC and so on. So we try to increase our impact by doing that. Now, these are the 40 member unions of ISC. So all of them are listed here. URSI is there at the bottom right in blue. And the red ones are the other unions which do make part of the geo-unions, so covering earth and space sciences. I'm not going to read through all of them. It's also so that this general lecture is normally also recorded, so it will become available later. Now, the geo-unions, besides having an impact on the decisions made between IC, we also do something a little bit more informative for our members. We run a series of webinars which are hosted by URSI, and all of them, of the webinars, are in the framework of the United Nations International Decade of Sciences for Sustainable Development. And these webinars, I think we have 3 or 4 until now, they're taking place every 2 or 3 months. They are also available on our website and on the URSI YouTube channel to look at. So it's different areas focusing on science for sustainable development. Now, beside IC, we're also linking up with other organizations. IEEE is one of them. And so we have currently a long-standing MOU, Memory of Understanding, with IEEE Antennas and Propagation Society. We are finalizing for the moment one with MTT, and there is also a draft version with EMC, so different societies within IEEE where we are linking up with. Besides that, we also have support that we provide to UCAF, Scientific Committee on Frequency Allocations, ICES we support as well, and then we have links with AGU, Europe, that's the organization behind the EUCAP conferences, and we are also an observer within ITU as a regional and international organization. So we're not standing alone in the world for the moment. We try to link up with other organizations to increase the visibility and to have some impact on how science is developing worldwide. Now, let's get back to the basics and look a little bit at the history and why URSI was created. Transmitting information over long distances has always been something that mankind has been involved in. Different technologies have been used, but let's say in the 19th century, the main technology which was used for transmitting information over longer distances was telegraphs, so wire telegraphs. But then came Maxwell. Electric fields, magnetic fields were known to mankind since ancient times, but Maxwell was the guy who, in fact, discovered that electric fields and magnetic fields were coupled, so that they had an impact on each other. And so that was, let's say, second half of the 19th century. And based on that, of course, Heinrich Hertz came and started to make some experiments. He applied Maxwell theory to the production and the reception of radio waves, but that was on very short distance. And then following that, Marconi, of course, he started to make some longer distance transmissions. So he built further on the experiments from Heinrich Hertz, and in 1895, he succeeded in receiving electromagnetic signals from his family home on an antenna which was more than 2 kilometers away. That was in Italy, close to Bologna. And then in 1899, so only 4 years later, there were the first transmissions over the channel between France and the UK. But they thought that due to the curvature of the Earth, the maximum transmission distance would be limited to 300 kilometers. So that was 1899. In 1901, so only 2 years later, there was a first transatlantic transmission on 12 December 1901 between Newfoundland and Cornwall, a distance of 2,900 kilometers, thus much farther than what they thought was possible due to the curvature of the Earth. And in fact, they also discovered then that nighttime transmission goes further than daytime transmission, and this was in fact the basic of the discovery of the ionosphere. So this was really the start of an explosion of interest and activities in looking and using wireless transmissions. So towards the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. But perhaps something that you have been wondering about, why is it called URSI, so Union Radio-Scientifique Internationale? Well, this has something to do with the fact that at the turn of the century, so second half of the 19th century, French was the language of the bourgeoisie in Belgium. Now, what has Belgium to do with radio science and URSI? Well, clear. If you look at the map, Belgium in red, it's in the middle of the world. That's obvious. It's clear. So we should have a play to do that. Otherwise, you know Belgium from different things, the beer, Marguerite, the chocolates, you have Tintin, the French fries, Tomorrowland, but where is radio science? So what's in fact the link? By the way, the Secretariat of URSI has always, since the beginning, been in Belgium. So there should be a link. Well, let's go back a little bit in history for Belgium. So Belgium became independent in 1830. And okay, as I was said, at that time it was mainly French-speaking, so the higher class was French-speaking. The second king of Belgium, King Leopold II, in 1879, he ordered the exploration of mid-Africa by Henry Morton Stanley. And at that time, it was so that the person who, in fact, paid for exploration, he was the owner of that country or that area. So King Leopold II, he was quite rich, so he paid out of his personal pocket for the exploration of that middle part of Africa, what is now Congo. So that means that by law in that century, he became the founder, the owner, the ruler of that independent Congo area. So it was his private property. The whole center of Africa was his private property. It was not a Belgian colony, it was his private property. It was only in 1908 when Congo became a Belgian colony. Now, so that's the end of, towards the end of the 19th century. Now, the third king of Belgium, so his son, Albert I, he was very interested in, let's say, further trying to explore this massive territory in the central part of Africa because there were minerals there, was richdom there. And so he also had an interest in communications. And so what he tried to do is to try to establish networks, communication networks in that central part of Africa. But at that time, okay, telegraphs, that's wire telegraphs used poles. Doing that in the middle of a tropical forest with termites and things like that is not a good idea. So the wireless transmissions that just came up front due to the work that Marconi did took away his interest. So he decided to use wireless transmission to set up communications channels in that central part of Africa. And so at that time, there were no similar activities going on. So it was really a primeur doing that. And using a secret fund, he asked a guy, Robert Goldschmidt, a Belgian engineer, to build a chain of antennas and communication links in central part of Africa. That was done in 1912. Along, where is the pointer? You see here on the map, along the river, the Congo River, from the coast up to Lubumbashi. He used 5 kilowatt transmitters, distance between the transmitters 250 to 500 kilometers, following the river. And it was done in Morse signals. Typical antennas that he was using, and in fact it was a kind of new developed antenna for that purpose. Now, Robert Goldschmidt himself, just going back a little bit to that person, so as I said, he was an engineer, he was extremely interested in communication technology as well. So he had in 1900 set up his own laboratory for electrical experiments. Then in 1907 he improved some of the experiments from Hertz and from Marconi to include much higher power output signals. There was in 1907 also a test for transmission between different points, so Brussels, Namur and Liège in Belgium. And in 1910 there was a demonstration at the World Expo in Brussels. But unfortunately, the whole expo, the pavilion where this demonstration was done, burned down in 1910 during the World Expo itself. So it was a little bit of a disappointment. But on the right-hand side, you see, let's say, the antenna structure that was constructed on top of what is the Palais de Justice in Brussels, so with all the wires during this experiment. Now, you might know Goldschmidt because he was also the organizer and the secretary of the Solvec conferences. So you most probably will know this picture. And Goldschmidt is in fact the guy standing here at the back. So he was well known within the scientific world, was very well appreciated, the work that he has done. He was a very rich guy as well. And he was, so let's say, very high profile. Now, so in fact, the interest, so we had that communication link that was set up in Central Africa, but King Albert, he still kept his interest in all of the communications, and he even installed a school for station operators in the gardens of the Royal Palace in Laken in Brussels. So in 1913, he installed also a powerful transmitter to have a direct link between Belgium and Congo. In fact, it was not really a scientific experiment, but the reason was that he spent some time sometimes in a summer residence in Congo, and through this link he was still able to keep a track of what was happening in Belgium, in Brussels. So he had a direct communication link with them. So there were, together with Goldschmidt, there was another one, Raymond Braillard, who led the team in Congo itself. And it became apparent that further development on wireless communications, radio telecommunications, required international organization. And so this, in fact, started somewhat the interest in having an organization like URSI. But originally transmitters worked with Morse code, but then Goldschmidt and Braillard start to experiment with HF generators, capable of transmitting continuous wave signals. He also started to use microphones. So by end of 1913, the first signals were picked up by radio amateurs in Belgium and in France. In March 1914, so just before the start of the First World War, there was a test transmission picked up from the Eiffel Tower, between Brussels and the Eiffel Tower. And then on 28th of March 1914, at 5 o'clock, there was the first live transmission of a concert, followed then by regular broadcasts. And then August, because of the First World War, everything was dismantled. Now, the wife of King Albert I, Queen Elizabeth, she was a musician, a very distinguished violinist. You might know the Queen Elizabeth piano concert violin competition in Belgium. Well, she is on the origin of that. But she was also very interested in technology. She was interested in radio telegraphy. She knew Morse code herself. She had her own receiver, so she was a radio amateur. And she was behind this first concert that was radioed to the world from Laken Castle on 28th of March 1914. And this first aria is the one that you heard. So that's the link, in fact, between that aria and URSI. It's, in fact, the first piece of music that was ever broadcasted using radio telegraphy or radio science. So 19 October 13, yeah, that was when I said that there was a need for international organization and cooperation. There was the first meeting of the Commission Provisoire Internationale de Télégraphie Sans Fil Scientifique in Brussels. So sometimes we see this as the birth of URSI, so 1913. At that time, President William Duddell, UK, Secretary General was Robert Goldschmidt, you already know him, and the honorary president was King Albert I. So if you become a honorary president within URSI, well, one of your predecessors is King Albert I. And the Commission was devoted to research and measurements of radio wave propagation. The equivalent as a starting fund was $200,000 at that time, coming from the personal pocket of Goldschmidt, so he was indeed a rich guy. And the participants of that meeting are listed here below. A second meeting was held in the Gardens of Laken in April 1914, and at that time we had 3 member committees, so representatives from the UK, from France and Belgium, and this is a picture that we call the picture of the founding fathers. So this, in fact, as I said, is a picture of the start of one of the first meetings of URSI, or the predecessors of URSI. Then in 1919, there was the first General Assembly of the International Research Council, so in fact the pre-runner of what is now ISC. So it's an international organization devoted to science, not only to radio science, but science in general. And at the occasion of that, in 1919, there was a decision taken to found, in fact, 5 unions of sciences. URSI was one of them, International Union of Scientific Radio and Telegraphy. And then the other ones, the creation of Union of Astronomy, Pure and Applied Chemistry, Geodesy, Geophysics, and Mathematics were also founded in 1919. So 1919, you can see as a kind of second rebirth of URSI, because then it was formally established through a decision by ISC. And all of those unions have a very similar way of operation and very similar objectives. And then in 1922, there was the first General Assembly of URSI. And at that time, so at the first General Assembly, we had 4 member committees, Belgium, France, United Kingdom, and the USA was also part of that. So when it was set up in 19, then we only had 3, but with the first General Assembly, we already had 4 countries in 1922. So 22 is the first General Assembly of URSI, might also be a third date that you can consider as being the birth or start of URSI. On the agenda were at that time measurements of electromagnetic fields, study of variations in radiogeometrical measurements, and study of statistics and disturbances. And then you can't read it, but there in Nature, there was an article where it was stated that URSI was established and had its first General Assembly. Now, in 2022, so at the first General Assembly, there were already some URSI commissions or committees being set up. In fact, there were 4 at that time: measurements, methods, standardization, radio propagation, atmospheric disturbances, and then the liaison with operators, practitioners, and amateurs. But it's very interesting what's there in red. In view of the moral and technical importance of the Commission on Measurement Methods and Standardization, as well as the usefulness of its work for public at large, the Commission should be numbered 1, since it might draw governmental subsidies. So the people here from Commission A, be proud, because this is really Commission number 1. But I'll come back to that later. Then in 27, we had the second General Assembly. At that time, we already had 11 member committees. And then we had participation from some well-known people: Daele, Van der Pol, Mesny Bureau, Appleton, Koga, Yagi. So some of those people after whom some of the URSI awards are being named. At that time, there was much attention paid to radio propagation problems. So some of the items are listed here. This is the list of the General Assemblies that took place over all the years. So in the beginning, you see that the timing between the different General Assemblies is not always constant, but somewhere starting around after The Hague, so just after Sydney 52, it starts to be a regular pace of 3 years, every 3 years. But now recently, of course, due to COVID, we had some, let's say, disturbance with the General Assembly in Rome in Italy. But as you see, we have been here before with URSI in 52. I don't think that many amongst us have been participating in that General Assembly, but okay, we have been here. Just a map showing where we have been worldwide. So the darker the color, the more times we were in that specific country. So in the US, we had the most of the General Assemblies, Canada as well, then some European countries, Japan as well. So this gives us the frequency of the General Assemblies. Now, at that time, the General Assemblies were a little bit smaller in size. You could even take a group picture, even with the partners on it. So this one is the one in 34 in London. And if you zoom in on the central part in front, there you see, for example, Goldschmidt, Ash, Appleton, Van der Pol, Daele. So those people who are, in fact, lie at the origin of some of the URSI awards. Now, how do the URSI commissions evolved over time? Well, it starts to get very complicated because the naming of some of the commissions was sometimes varying slightly from General Assembly to General Assembly. Some of the dates are quite vague. But this, in fact, during the years since 92 up to something like the 50s, 60s, This was more or less the commissions that were established. They are listed here. And some of the dates when they were established, so for example, the cooperation with amateurs is only a limited period that it was formed, and then it was renamed to terrestrial radio noise, so the Commission 4 was changed in name and so on. But then in 1975 at the General Assembly in Lima in Peru, there was a reorganization of the URSI commissions, and they are listed here as we know them from A to J. And in 1990 in Prague, Commission K was headed on electromagnetics in biology and medicine. And now you may start to wonder, something that you have asked perhaps before is, do we know the alphabet at URSI? Because we're missing I. But why do we miss I? Because it resembles number 1, and the Commission on Measurements should be number 1. So there should be no confusion in the naming of the commissions, and so Commission I is omitted just because of that original statement that the Commission on Measurements should be number 1. So that's the reason also why Commission A is on the measurements, so the first listed, and Commission I is missing. It's not because we don't know the alphabet, there is a reason behind it. Okay, so let's get a little bit closer to present. So what we're doing now, of course, we have the URSI flagship meetings in a 3-year cycle. So year 1, we have the General Assembly, the GAS, then we have the Atlantic Radio Science meeting, AP-RASC. People start to call that the Gran Canaria meeting already. In year 3, we have the Asia-Pacific Radio Science meeting, AP-RASC, that's where we are now. And then we're back to year 1 with the GAS. Besides that, we have the commission-led meetings, so specific meetings, conferences which are organized by the scientific commissions. We have the member committee meetings, so what you can call the national meetings or regional meetings. And then, of course, we also support technically or even financially some of the conferences organized by the partner organizations that we work with. So just as a teaser, you know, next year in August, we will be in Krakow for the General Assembly again, 2026. Check the website. Then after that, in 27, we're going to Gran Canaria again. The dates are here. It will be our 5th edition. Then 28, we have 2 proposals, Taoyama and Chengdu, and this evening the board will decide on the venue. And then in 2029, we're going to have our General Assembly in Singapore. Besides those flagship meetings, we also have individual members. So we have the paying member committees, let's say the countries. I'm not allowed to use that terminology, but it's easier. But besides that, we have the individual membership. You have the fellows, which is on invitation only. The senior members, I should add senior here on the slide. And you have the corresponding members. And for fellows and senior members, the benefits are that you have discounted registration fee at the URSI flagship meetings, but also discounted fees as member at the IEEE, APS, and EUCAP meetings, for example. And you also can use discounted paid charge for the new or relatively new radio science letters publication. Radio Science Letters, in fact, it's an electronic journal. It's owned and operated by URSI. It's aimed at trying to rapidly publish original work in all areas of radio science with relatively short contribution. It's rigorously peer-reviewed, open access, only electronic format, 1 volume per calendar year, and we also identify every publication with volume number, year of publication, DOI. The editor-in-chief is Henrik Wallen. If you want more information, you can look at the website. You can talk to Henrik, of course, as well. If you want to know more about the history of URSI, there is a history book that we made a few years ago, and which collects some information and some contributions from, in total, 20 of the member committees, so where they explain different sizes, different way of explaining what kind of activities they have in their member committees and how it was evolved. We have contributions from the 10 commissions, and there is one overview historical article which I used for a lot of the information here. So you can get it via the website. It's a free PDF download, but you first have to, let's say, ask for it or register for it. It's a quite extensive book. It's more than 600 pages. So I'll stop here. If there is any question, you can always contact me. You can contact us via the website, email address. And I hope it has been somewhat informative. It has given you some background information on what URSI does as an international organization, in which kind of environment we work, but also what lies at the origins of URSI, and some of the explanations of some of the weird aspects of the organization that we are involved in. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the whole flagship meeting here in Sydney as well. Thank you.